Welcome back to Zane Customs. In this week's episode, I'm sculpting Wolverine. So, a few weeks, maybe even months ago, I mentioned in one of my YouTube videos that anything that anybody would be interested in me sculpting, they could comment, and I'd probably end up doing it, just because I'm trying to find what people even are interested. I've been sculpting what I like, but I wanted to know what other people would be interested in. And one of those comments was to sculpt Wolverine. So I decided to go ahead and do it. So this sculpt actually started, probably close to 2 months ago. And this was a sculpture that I really got into. I really enjoy doing. I started off here in Forger, which is an app for the iPad, just to kind of rough things out. And you can see I'm doing some design things like adding shoulder pads and stuff like that, but mainly I'm just trying to rough out his body shape, and then I'll put it into Forger or into ZBrush. But eventually, once I get it to a point I'm happy with, I'll put it into ZBrush and really start to work on it. But like I said, this was one that I really enjoyed, so I put a lot of time and effort into it, and the more I worked on it, the more I realized it's going to take a long time to get to a point that I'm happy with. Like I've mentioned in a lot of my other videos, I usually spend about a week per sculpture, just because I told myself that I want to put out one video a week, so that kind of gives me 1 week to work on the sculpture. And this one it took a lot longer. I did a lot of work on the side in between projects, and any of my downtime at nights or anything, I would work on this, and then obviously the week that I actually gave myself. So in the end, this had 2, probably 3 times as much time put into it, just because I got really into it, got really excited about it, and I really enjoy spending more time working on these more detailed sculptures. Like if anybody remembers, I did a sculpture of Zuko a number of months back, and I spent a long time on that one. Probably the same 2, 3, maybe even 4 times the amount of time I regularly spend on a sculpture, just because I have kind of passion projects that I want to really dig my teeth into and spend a lot of time on them. Whereas the other sculptures, a lot of the times they're like Minecraft or something like that. That's pretty simple already, and so I can kind of bust it out pretty quick. But like with this Wolverine, the more I got into it, the more I decided I didn't want to just do like the classic comic Wolverine. I mean, that was definitely the main inspiration, but I started adding an armor and these different things into his suit, and I thought it'd be cool to kind of design Wolverine as he would look when he joins the MCU, or how I wish he could have looked when Fox made those live action movies. And doing that, I obviously have to add a lot more detail, and it takes a lot longer. And also, just to try and talk about the design more, obviously Wolverine doesn't need armor because he has a healing factor, and any damage he can take, he's going to heal from. But I figured if he had the choice, why not take armor? So I decided I just started off with this one hand and gave him forearm armor and a little piece going over the top of his hand, and thought it looked cool. And so I decided to kind of add armor, just a light armor in throughout the rest of his body. And one thing I did for the sculpt is I tried to keep the classic yellow and blue colors for the whole sculpture, but I also wanted to add in more, because again, like I said, I wanted this to be something that might show up in like a live action film. And obviously I didn't take it that far to where like it looks realistic. It's still stylized and a little bit cartoony to my style, but a lot more realistic. And I figured doing that, breaking up the colors would look a lot better. So I actually have some lighter blues and darker blues and things like that. And I basically just started off with this one arm and just kept working on it until I got something I was happy with, and then kind of took the whole design sense from that, his one arm, and added that to the rest of his body, because I didn't want to do his arm and then move on to his chest and then legs and things, and then decide later on I don't like the look of this, and then go have to make those changes across his whole body. So you can see I do a little bit of other parts of his body here and there, but I really tried to focus heavily on his one arm and make sure I really liked the way that was going before I moved on. Like you can see, I just changed his suit, the fabric of his suit, to a darker blue because it wasn't looking very good. And like he has straps holding his armor on that were brown, and then I went in and changed them to black because it looked a little bit more modern and sleek, and things like that I think was a benefit to kind of just focusing on one part of his body, fleshing that out, and then moving on. And also, for anybody that has watched my previous videos, you might feel like this one's moving a lot quicker. It's pretty jittery, kind of hard to see, and that's just because, like I said, this one took 2 to 3 times the amount of length to actually make the video. And so when I condensed it down, I obviously had to condense a lot more material down into 15, 16 minutes, whatever this video ends up being. So it's a lot more jittery, and which is a bummer to me. And is one thing I was thinking about, is doing these sculptures that take a lot longer. I kind of want to like do them justice and have the video be, you know, up to 20 minutes long, because there's a lot of fine details that you kind of miss and things that I don't have time to talk about just because it moves so fast. But like, again, I spent about 3 weeks working on the sculpture and it's just moving too quick to really see. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. I also was considering, if you guys really like the way this Wolverine turns out and you think I should spend longer per sculpture, I may move to doing one video every 2 weeks. But again, I don't know about that, because there's a decent amount of sculptures that I can do relatively quickly. Like I said, the Minecraft ones, they're super simple design wise, and bringing them into that kind of realistic styles is generally 1 week. I'm pretty happy with it. But with something like this, it took me a lot longer. And so yeah, just let me know what you guys think, if you think that's a good idea, or if you think I should stick to trying to put one video per week. Like I said, I really tried to flesh out that one arm to make sure I liked how it looked, because you can already see his right arm looks different than his left arm. So now I'm going to have to go back in and fix his right arm. So I decided to just really flesh out the one arm that I was working on and make sure that looked good, and then move on to the rest of his body. But one problem I was having with that is as far as coloring and blocking stuff out that way. So I went in and actually colored his whole body, and his body's not fully rendered or sculpted. It's just color. So like the blue, the yellow stripes, and then the black on his hips there, it's just color. There's no difference in texture or anything like that. And I just basically did that to help me kind of visualize what it's going to look like and let me know if I like the way it's going. And then I'll go in and add in different textures and things to those different colors. This is one of my favorite parts. His whole hand is pretty much done, so just going in and adding in tiny details like seam lines or anything like that is really fun. Like even after it's done being textured and everything, or I don't know if you noticed, because again, the movies are pretty jittery, so it's hard to see, but I added little armor pieces to the top of all of his knuckles, and then 3 little pieces of armor that go in between the knuckles where his claws come out, and just little things like that. That's just probably my favorite part of sculpting, just adding those tiny little details to basically just make the sculpture more interesting. And also one thing I'm always thinking about now when I sculpt, because I post everything that I sculpt on Etsy to buy, and I didn't really think about this in the beginning of my career, but one thing I think about now is like, how is this gonna work out when I'm painting it? And generally for me at least, the actual physical sculpture looks better when you have more detail to paint on. And like for his fabric in general, if it's just smooth and you paint it one solid color, it looks pretty plasticky. But then if you have that fabric texture on and then kind of dry brush over that and have with a lighter color, so it really highlights that texture, it looks a lot more realistic. And just things like that I try to always keep in mind as I'm sculpting. This is a perfect example of what I could do with having that longer period of time to work on. If I do a foot or a boot, I don't really have a lot of time to focus on things like that, so I probably would have just end up really not doing anything with the bottom of it, and then when I create the base, having some dirt or something kind of around the side, so you don't really notice that there's no grip or any texture on the bottom of the boot. And to be fair, a lot of the times it doesn't matter, a lot of that stuff doesn't come up. But with this one, I spent a lot of time on it, and I wanted to have the option, if I wanted to show the bottom of his boot, to texture it. And it ended up working in the long run because his left leg is up, so you can actually see the bottom of the boot. And now here I'm adding texture to his legs, and I would say that the legs were probably the hardest part for me as far as design, just because it took me a long time to decide if it looked right. Again, you're seeing this so fast, but this is like hours and hours of work, so it just kind of skips past time. You know, I might start this one day and then pick it up the next morning, you know, and that's really nice because it gives me a lot of time to think about it and then come back and realize, oh, I don't like this or I don't like that. But the legs and the chest also probably would have been difficult, but I did the legs first, so that kind of helped inform how I wanted the chest to go. Ended up going pretty smooth, but it mainly just took me a long time to decide if I was okay with it, because I wanted him to obviously have some sort of fabric cloth, but I wanted it to look like something that a superhero would wear, you know, especially because, like, if you watch the Captain America movies or something like that, I know in some of them they tried to make his suit look like it's made of Kevlar or something like sturdy. So I was trying to get that look, but also I had the black in there that I wanted it to kind of look rubbery and like a more flexible part of his body. But then at the same time, I was thinking, why would he have that on the side of his leg? Wouldn't he want something stronger? And just things like that. And in the end, it's not the most realistic design, but I just kind of went with what looked cool. And here I'm just adding in some pouches on his legs, because most superheroes have some sort of pouches to hold stuff, and I thought he might want to hold something in there. I actually looked up a lot of reference photos for this one. Same with that Zuko one that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. If I'm doing something that takes a long time and I want a lot of detail on it, I want it to look good. Like Zuko, he was based heavily off samurai armor, and so I looked up a lot of samurais because I obviously don't have samurai armor, don't know how it looks, so I used a lot of that for reference. For Wolverine here, I looked up obviously a lot of comic book photos, and then looked up all his suits in the X-Men movies, which the only one that was really helpful was from I believe it was Days of Future Past. His earlier ones were just leather, and I didn't like the look of those at all. And then in a lot of his movies, he's just wearing jeans and a t-shirt or a white tank top or something, you know, and that's not what I was going for here. I definitely wanted the classic comic costume, so I ended up looking up a lot of fan art and things like that, and some military or tactical suits, and to kind of help inform me what I was doing. But a lot of it came down to, again, just what I wanted it to look like. And even though, like I said, I want this to be a more realistic version of his comic suit, something that you might see on film, it's not hyper realistic. Obviously, that's not my style. I'm a little bit more cartoony. And then I also really wanted to lean into the blue and yellow comic book suit. So I'd say most of my inspiration or reference photos, it was just all his different suits that he's had in the comics over the years. And the hardest part of this sculpt, not design wise, but like actually physically sculpting wise, was definitely his face. I looked up a ton of reference photos of people yelling, and in the end, I'm sure for any of you artists or people that really know anatomy well out there, you're gonna know that his mouth is too long, and there's just a bunch of minor problems with it. I think in the end, I'm really happy with it. I think it looks good. I think it fits with the style of, or with my style, I guess I should say. So I was pretty happy with it, but it is not the most realistic human face, which again, that's not really what I'm going for, so I was fine with that. But that is something I just thought I would mention, that even though, like I said, trying to make a suit that would be in the for a live action film, this isn't necessarily something you could throw on screen and have people think it's real. Like, obviously it's a little cartoony still. I was actually really happy with it. The one thing I wish I could have got across more, because it looks like he's upset and yelling, but I wish it conveyed more anger or something. I don't know. I was looking at a lot of photos where he was just yelling and looked pissed off like Wolverine does, and I don't feel like I made him look angry enough, or because I wanted him to look menacing and scary, which is kind of hard to do with a bright yellow and blue jumpsuit, but I think it mostly looks pretty good. That's the finished sculpt right there, though. All I'm doing now is going in and recoloring them to kind of show you a variation of what his classic brown and yellow suit might look like for anybody that would be interested in that. I just thought that'd be cool to show off here. That's the finished sculpt right there, though. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm super happy with the way it turned out, and I like having a full 2-3 weeks to work on it. And let me know what you guys think about that idea in the comments. But yeah, if you liked it, I'd super appreciate anybody that's willing to like, comment, subscribe. If you want to check out my Instagram or my Etsy, those are both at Zane Customs, and I'll have a link down below to check those out. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.